Welcome to the yield tree. In this world flooded with algorithms and low intelligence noise, the very fact that you can click and sit down to listen to this whisper proves that you belong to that tiny minority who remain vigilant about the true pulse of wealth. Here, we don't discuss those illusions that teach you how to get rich overnight, nor do we repeat those pale excuses fabricated by mainstream financial media to placate the masses. We only dig into the underlying logic of civilizational order evolution, buried deep beneath macro data. Now, pour yourself a glass of water and adjust your breathing, because we are standing at the absolute singularity where the old monetary order collapses and a new credit system reorganizes. I will reveal to you an open secret that is happening and irreversible. Ladies and gentlemen, history is no longer a specimen gathering dust in museums. It is pulsating vividly on our candlestick charts with unprecedented tension and cold metallic texture. At this very moment, the defense line of the global monetary system has experienced some kind of fateful breach. We are witnessing a Trinity coronation that is extremely rare in human financial history. This is not merely a localized charge of some particular metal, but gold, silver, and platinum simultaneously, with the same resolute stance, ringing the bell of historical highs. This synchronized resonance is no coincidence. It is the formal ultimatum of the collective downgrade of global sovereign currency credibility. The final judgment of physical assets against virtual credit. Let US first see clearly the chief justice of this trial, gold. As the ultimate judge of all credit civilizations, gold yesterday demonstrated to the world its absolute sovereignty as the king of currencies. With a 1.85% gain, it proudly stood at the peak of $4,922.9 before the close. And at the most intense moment of intraday trading, it once touched $4,929.2. If you still try to question this price with outdated inflation adjustment logic or the Fed's interest rate expectations, then you have completely lost this high-stakes gamble about the future. Gold's roar at this very moment is not because of the trivial smoke of geopolitical conflicts, but is declaring to the global fiat currency system, the pieces of paper in your hands have lost their last anchoring power. Meanwhile, that shadow metal silver long marginalized by Wall Street and seen as an industrial vassal completed its violent metamorphosis yesterday. It rose $3.08, with a single-day gain reaching an astonishing 3.31%, shooting straight up to the high of $96.31. Pay attention to this number. It is less than $4 away from $100, that psychological threshold symbolizing monetary divinity. You need to understand, silver's leaps are never gentle. They're an explosive release of energy after prolonged suppression, a violent collision of physical world scarcity against digital bubbles. And what caught those elite analysts even more off guard was platinum. As yesterday's apex predator, platinum swept away all shorts with a 6.16% single-day gain. In just 24 hours, it violently surged $153, ultimately closing at $2,646. Even though it touched an absolute high of $2,651 during the trading session, this momentum still displayed a bone-chilling resilience. Why? Why now? Why all of them? Mainstream media, like Reuters, will try to brush you off with the moldy old excuse of geopolitical tensions. They'll point at newspaper headlines and tell you that risk-off sentiment is the only driving force. But I am here to tell you, this is pure logical laziness, or even systematic deception. If you tear off that facade, you'll find Greenland's resource negotiations have already reached some kind of deep peace framework. The flames of war in Eastern Europe are entering a cooling cycle with new diplomatic gamesmanship. The gunsmoke in Gaza is fading. The standoffs in the Middle East are being restrained. In fact, the real tension in global geopolitics is at a low point of the past 2 years. If the world is trending toward a so-called cold peace, Then why are these precious metals that symbolize turmoil and doomsday instead surging like crazy? The real crisis has never been in the gunfire. It is in that thing called DXY, the US dollar index in those invisible debt stacks. The dollar index slid to 98.32, a single-day drop of 0.57%. This is a death signal. When global stock indices are all flashing green, yet the dollar is diverging so violently in negative correlation with precious metals, there is only one logic behind it. The market no longer believes the dollar's purchasing power can support its ever-inflating debt interest. The so-called macro de-dollarization is no longer an obscure term existing only in academic discussions. It has become the very air every one of us currency holders breathes. Every basis point the dollar index slides. The firewall of physical assets rises an inch higher. 98.32 is just the prelude. When the Federal Reserve finds itself stuck in a damned if you don't quagmire in its upcoming interest rate decisions, while inflation spreads like wildfire through the lower rungs of society, the dollar's gold content is being drained by a force from a higher dimension. This is not an ordinary bull market. This is the final verdict on the fiat currency experiment of the past half-century. Let's put the scalpel to platinum. Many people don't understand this metal. Its logic is colder than gold and more physically harsh. Platinum production is locked to two coordinates on Earth with extreme geopolitical tension: Siberian permafrost and South African deep wells. Since 2022, the structural fracture on the supply side has never truly been repaired. When the actual controllers of these resources realize that the rare atoms in their hands are more useful than the digits in their accounts, they chose rhythmic, strategic production cuts. Platinum's surge is a brutal mockery of global supply chain security. $2,646. This is not just a quote. It is industrial civilization's panic confirmation when facing physical limits. Remember this. In this digital age, people often forget that any virtual credit, when facing real physical scarcity, will instantly return to zero. Here, I want to share a bizarre anomaly that only those who understand the market to its very core would notice. Just as spot silver surges toward $96, even displaying an extremely aggressive posture in futures contracts, I discovered a paradox from a latest internal order from the US Mint. The official quota prices for 2025 edition Peace Silver Dollars, Morgan Silver Dollars, and presidential metals are still hovering around $90 to $91. What does this mean? This means that on the eve of order collapse, a very rare space-time distortion has appeared in the pricing power of physical assets. This window is extremely brief. Smart people won't chase those paper options filled with leverage. They will, like silent hunters, precisely capture these physical anchor points, temporarily forgotten by official channels, before liquidity completely dries up. I even made a trip to the local coin shop to complete my 2010 proof Roosevelt silver dime. Even against the backdrop of silver prices going crazy, the foundation of physical trading still retains a certain sluggish yet warm inertia. There I saw those artworks called hobo nickels. Those Kiss of Death, Punisher, and Aztec mandala carved on coins are not just art, they're more like prophecies. Every line the carvers etched onto the coins reminds us, when currency loses its exchange value, its only remaining value is as a relic after the destruction of civilization. Gold is now just one step away from the $5,000 mark. $4,922.9. This is not just a price. It is a number with altar-like. According to the deep projections of the Fibonacci sequence, $5,187 is the true endpoint of this round of irrational exuberance. Gold doesn't generate interest, but in an era when credit turns to ash, gold's very existence is the highest interest, because it hedges against the arrogance of civilization. When those million-dollar salaried strategists stare blankly at their screens in Manhattan offices, what they're actually seeing is the end of the global 40-year debt expansion cycle. If gold holds steady at $5,000, all macroeconomics textbooks will turn to waste paper. You might ask, if I rush in now, am I paying the last premium for the early movers? My reason tells me that the current market is indeed in an extreme overbought state. From any technical indicator, whether it is gold, silver, or platinum, they're all stretched too tight. But I must remind you, at the singularity of macro restructuring, traditional indicators often become invalid. Overbought doesn't necessarily signal a pullback. It might signal that we've entered a new dimension where gravity has failed. When the credit cornerstone of the dollar starts to shake, all value coordinates will drift along with it. The gravity of the fiat currency world is disappearing, and we're in an inertia of being launched into outer space. This is a civilizational resonance that transcends national borders. No matter which continent you are on, no matter whether you are holding yen, euros, or renminbi, the essence of your purchasing power is being devoured by the same inflationary fire. Silver's roar at $96 is actually whispering to every awakened individual. Paper prosperity has already overdrawn the future, and now is the time to return to physical assets, to return to sovereignty. History is turning to the very last page of that heavy ledger right before our eyes. The title of this page is called Return to Reality. From gold at $4,922 to platinum at $2,646. Every point of gain is the ultimate fine for past arrogance, prejudice, and cheap credit. At this critical moment, please stop paying attention to that noise. Stop participating in those low-intelligence debates. Keep your eyes on that tree, the tree of logic that can provide you shelter and guide you toward the direction of wealth. You need to learn to read the lament of our times from those exquisite coins, like those Aztec monkey masks silver coins, or that WW War nickel engraved with salivate metal. They're reminding you that wealth has never been created. It is only being redistributed. When paper money's credit runs dry, only those things with physical weight and historical depth can carry you through that dark tunnel. I've seen on the Mint's shipping manifest that logistics costs are quietly rising due to energy price fluctuations. This is yet another hidden signal. The second shockwave of inflation has already bared its fangs on the horizon. The current market sentiment is going through a leap from skepticism to conviction. Most people are still waiting for a so-called technical pullback, hoping to buy gold at $4,500 or lower. But I can tell you, at a dual singularity of geopolitics and monetary credit, this pullback may never come in the way you expect. When people start realizing that the fiat currency in their hands is becoming a toxic asset, panic buying will become instinct. Silver's rapid bounce back after dropping below $90 has perfectly proven this point. The defensive strength of the underlying logic is far more impenetrable than the buying pressure on the charts. I hope you can not only understand these numbers, but also sense the massive and irreversible will behind them. This is a collective divestment by global creditors from debtors. A collective farewell by emerging markets to traditional reserve currencies. When platinum becomes ever more expensive in Siberian mines, when silver becomes irreplaceable in the photovoltaic and chip industries, when gold piles up like mountains in central bank vaults around the world, how much real substance do the digital assets in your hands actually have? In the coming months, we will see more rules being broken. We may witness the sudden collapse of certain fiat currencies or the instant shutdown of certain physical asset trading markets. At that moment, you will be grateful that you once stopped to think at this moment at the price point of $4,922. What we need to do is not to predict the precise top, but to ensure that when the tide recedes, we are still wearing that armor called physical assets. I often search for answers in the texture of coins. Take that Chief Skull nickel, for example. It marks the end of an era and also a continuation of power. Our financial system now is like the skull on that nickel, wearing a magnificent feathered crown, but inside there is nothing left but a hollow skeleton. The more ornate the crown of fiat currency, the more shocking its underlying fragility. Every basis point rise in silver is peeling away this layer of false skin. What should you do now? Don't let the red and green flashing on the screen rob you of your sanity. What you need to do is examine your asset allocation structure. See how much of it is built on the promises of others, and how much is built on physical inevitability. At the threshold of $5,000 gold, at this trinity of historical highs, what we should do is not revel, but build defenses. You should be like those people who collected nickel coins during World War II, planting the seeds of your logic today for an unknowable tomorrow. Logic is the only currency in this world that won't depreciate. In the days ahead, I'll keep watching those unusual movements in official channels for you, watching those supply breakpoints ignored by mainstream analysts. What we're looking for are those wealth anchor points below the $5,187 projection line. Whether it is silver's sprint to $100 or gold's $5,000 milestone, these are just the prelude to this grand historical drama. The real transformation lies in how we redefine the word value. When you pick up a heavy silver coin and feel its temperature and texture in your palm, you'll understand why all empires ultimately return to gold. Because between humanity's finite lifespan and infinite greed, only these eternal atoms can provide the soul authenticity. Silver's sideways consolidation at $96 is actually giving those who haven't gotten on board one last chance. Platinum's firm stance above $2,600 is telling the industrial system the era of cheap energy and cheap materials has completely ended. I'll be here with you. Until the end of this upheaval, this is the yield tree. On this morning, whitewashed by false prosperity, please hold tight to the logic in your hands. In this fierce wind of macro de-dollarization, only the tree of logic, deeply rooted beneath the earth, can bless you to not only survive, but thrive. Don't let this crazy world blind your eyes. The true coronation of wealth has just entered its most breathtaking movement. We'll meet at the next turning point of logic.